Hello, I'm Sarah Hayden. I'm here with some wonderful Choral Society members. We're at PortMedia Open Studios today, and both Penny and Brian are here to talk about registration. Now, I've already been almost 100% convinced to join, and hopefully after you watch this show, you will also be interested in joining the Choral Society. Penny Lazarus and Brian Greenberg, welcome, and thank you for taking the time and coming and telling us about the Choral Society.
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
So maybe give us a little bit of background about maybe how you got involved, and then maybe a little bit about where the registration right now, where you're at.
Okay.
So I'll do my little thing.
Okay.
But, I moved here in 2013 with my wife, and it was in September, and then I started hearing ads on the radio for the Christmas concert, and I kind of delayed, but there was a snowstorm, and it was sold out supposedly, but there was a snowstorm, and I thought, well, let me go show up anyway, and so I did. I loved the chorus, and
nice.
Came back.
Good story. What about you, Penny? I know, because we have sung together before in the Choral Society.
We overlapped a little bit, right?
Yeah.
In 2000, my family moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to Newburyport, and I had always been singing in choirs from high school through college, and was in a community chorus in Pittsburgh. And when we moved, it was, to break all of those ties of all of those things you built around your life that make you happy. When we moved, the first thing I was going to do, and I had an infant in my arms, plus a first grader, soon to be first grader, but the first thing I was going to do was to find a chorus to join. And all I had to do was Google Newburyport, and the Newburyport Choral Society came up. So I remember my first call was then President to Carol Yunker.
Oh, interesting, yes.
And my other question about finding about the course is like, do you have babysitting?
They don't, right?
They don't. But
they still don't.
They still don't. Yeah. But we have people who sing of all ages and all various stages of life. People are retired, people who have young children and are dying to have something of their own one night a week. And my husband did wonderful children babysitting duty. Well, every Monday night I came to sing. We've now moved to Tuesday nights. But I know the age of my youngest son because he's 18, and that was when we moved in 2000.
That's funny. So now you have registration for your spring concert.
Yes.
It's happening right now.
Yes.
That's right. We've had only one rehearsal, and it was a short rehearsal because the first one is usually just about getting the majority of folks registered and introducing the music. So it's not at all late to come in and register. We have 2 more weeks that's open for registration. Yeah, 2 more Tuesdays.
Great.
Tuesday the 15th and Tuesday the 22nd.
Uh-huh. So tempting. I am going to go. I wrote it down for myself. Tuesday the 15th. I'm pretty sure I can make that one.
It's at 6:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For registration.
For registration, and then you register, and then you can try us out too. You don't have to commit right then and there. You can borrow music for the evening, and then turn it back in at the end of the evening and decide afterwards.
Well, I've heard such wonderful things about the director.
Our music director, George Case, he's wonderful.
I did go to the winter concert, and speaking of that, we're going to play a clip from, you have 2 from the winter concert. We'll have one, and then you can tell us a little bit about after we listen to that. Do you want to say anything before we listen to those clips about the concert, or you want to talk about the winter concert?
It was completely sold out, both Saturday night and Sunday afternoon. And our winter concerts also include the Greater Newburyport Children's Chorus.
I sat right next to them up in the balcony. They were good. It was
They're
so fun.
Very good.
I love seeing kids involved.
And they actually began from an after-school program at the Mullen School, and their first collaboration was with the Choral Society. And they've been ongoing and expanding, and it's just wonderful to have the group be part of the education of children in the area.
Yeah,
they invited us to sing at their concert
after
our concert,
and we did. It was wonderful.
It was a highlight of our December as well as their singing with us.
Fun.
But this first piece is called "Brightest and Best," and I forget who the composer is. But it's just a very
Sean Kirchner,
and I think it's the Scottish tradition, the Scottish harp tradition. Well, isn't that what this?
And it ties into an American harp folk tradition as well. So it's representative of what's called the genre of music called Southern harmony.
Oh, nice.
So it's very folk tradition driven, and it's sung very fast and a lot of fun to sing.
You can hear it.
Okay, so we'll take a listen. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what we just listened to? Want to just describe a little more, or was that good? You mean,
No,
I think you're bringing these clips in so people can hear how the Choral Society sounds and what a lush group it is. It's very nice. It's really wonderful.
So I mean, I guess we could just say, so that was an example of the liveliness of a piece where everyone's just enjoying, you know, the feeling, being swept up in this feeling of a fast-paced piece.
Yeah. Now, how many members are there?
We've been running between 140 and 150 members.
Wow.
So while there are community choruses throughout the North Shore, many of them are much smaller, and they don't perform with orchestra. So that's one of the special things that we do.
Yes.
And so when you hear the clip, you're going to hear is 140 voice, 20-piece orchestra.
Wonderful.
Sound, and that's what's unique.
So the next clip is a piece called Lullaby.
Yes.
And I think you told me it was Ryan Murphy.
Murphy. And that we hear from people who are in the audience was their favorite piece of the entire concert. Probably if you took a poll of the chorus, it was our favorite piece too. Yeah. Sad, heartbreaking song about a mother losing her child to the angels in heaven. And it turns out, in hindsight, that Ryan Murphy went to the elementary school that was the site of the horrible shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. So he wrote the song before the shooting, but in the aftermath, you can't help but sing this and think about gun violence in our country. And the melody's just gorgeous. So then you hear just a wonderful melodious sound of the chorus matching each other, listening to each other, as George always has us working to do. So no one single voice sticks out, but the idea of blending together is part of the joy of being in a chorus.
Okay, well, let's take a listen to Lullaby.
Okay.
All right. That was lovely and beautiful, and I recall hearing that. It is very beautiful.
Well,
So, so maybe let's talk about what's coming up for the compositions that you're going to be singing, that I might be singing. What's happening?
that you're going to be singing.
And I'm going to be singing.
Yes, you will be
now
singing.
I've just gotten sucked right in, yes. But it's fun. I mean, let's talk about the composer in residence first, because I think then you can talk about a little bit from the past concert, and he was just there. It was really wonderful to see the
Were you there?
composer. So
Oh,
yes,
you were
I
there
saw
to
him.
see him stand up.
I was looking at his, face as he's watching,
Oh,
and he did. Yes, he was happy.
He was very pleased.
He wasn't like ah.
No,
he was.
no. We were worried that he's going to
It's
be.
tough. It was
But-
tough. That was hard music.
It was very difficult music because it was poetry from a British poet from World War One. And so if you're going to be writing a composition that is using the text of poetry of the horrors of war, it's not going to be a pretty sound.
Yeah.
And to sing with dissonance is very difficult. And then the rhythm was very jagged to represent the emotion of World War One as well. So it was a challenge to sing, but we felt very pleased with the end product. And Andrew was very pleased. He's
That's
a
good.
wonderful
He's young.
guy.
He's very young.
He
isn't
is very young. He has children who are in elementary school and preschool. He's delightful. He's married to a folk cellist. He was born in Utah, but he's now living in Cambridge, and he's taking an advanced composition degree at Boston Conservatory, which is how he met our music director, George Case.
Wonderful.
Right.
And this piece that he'd written first, celebrating Wendell Berry, in music, Wendell Berry, it's a poet I was not familiar with until we started to know what we were going to be singing this semester. But he's a poet born in Kentucky, and he studied at Curtis, and he taught at NYU, but he was always a farmer. And he's also an activist. And so he did a lot of protesting and writing about the decimation of our environment through the coal industry and what coal ash does to the environment, and what nuclear power plants do if they're not safe. And
Wow.
so he actually left academia for a while, went back and bought a farm, and farmed full time and wrote poetry. And
Interesting.
these are the pieces that we'll be singing. And the first one that we'll be singing for the future, with text by Wendell Berry, comes from his set of poems called From the Sabbath. And what he did is, he was a very religious thinker, but on Sunday morning, instead of going to church, he would put down his plow and walk the fields of his farm, and just think about the sounds that he heard, and would write on that day.
That's
And
Actually,
Lovely.
that's a good point. Maybe we want to cut to that clip. The clip
Oh,
of the
okay.
Wendell Berry.
all right. So why don't we take a listen to that? That's so it's the music, or it's a poem.
The clip is the last piece of the
Okay.
collection of celebrating Wendell Berry in music.
Okay.
Is what we'll be listening to.
It's called-
Whatever is foreseen in joy.
All right. Let's take a listen.
Whatever is foreseen in joy must be lived out from day to day. Joy, joy, vision held open in the dark by our 10,000 days of work.
Okay. Yes, that's beautiful. It's
And-
really very intense too, and we talk here about protest, not just poetry, but protest music, because it is, of course, like to bring in First Amendment. It's something we have in this country. We can write poems, we can sing songs about how we feel about what's happening, where in other countries.
And it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because Andrew Maxfield, who has a very active website, and everybody can go and Google
write that down.
Andrew Maxfield, and he has a blog where he talks about how he came to compose the music that goes with the poems of Wendell Berry. And of course he went and he met with Wendell Berry and heard Wendell Berry talk about his poetry. But Andrew Maxfield, after he said first he memorized his poems so that he could just feel the rhythm for his music, because he couldn't write without having actually the poetry in his body and in his head. And then he went to the Smithsonian and did research about working songs. Oh. And he specifically refers to, if I had a hammer.
Yes. Oh, that's so interesting that you... I just bought 2 additional CDs that will be, one of the high school students who's an intern will put them up on the radio, because we're going to have a protest playlist that will be either an hour or 2 hours on the weekend. So it's Joan Baez, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and then I have music from the Smithsonian and a bunch of old. And then Tyler also did a huge sort of research on YouTube, and because I think it's so important, and particularly now in this time, and that people do have a voice, and they are, our current musicians and rap artists. I was saying to Tyler, Beyonce, they write protest songs too. We just don't always know that song was written because they want to say something about what is going on. It's just not always, love and whatever.
Right. And so when George Case, our music director, put this concert together, he actually was thinking about that. All of these pieces that we're singing in the new semester, celebrating Wendell Berry in music by Andrew Maxfield, Aaron Copland's Old American Songs, and Bernstein's Chichester Psalms. These are composers who are not only American, but they all have ties to Boston, and they are all of the land, and they are all of the American spirit. And at least the American Songs by Copland and the Wendell Berry also celebrate the American pioneering spirit of farming and growing our own food and being sensitive and conscious of our environment.
Cool.
And so it's kind of really interesting. I just thought of this morning, that our spring concerts,
and the spring
are, the concerts are, so if you sign up, you have to clear this weekend so that you can be singing the concert.
May 4th and May 5th.
But it's the beginning of spring, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about planting and being, and the we have the local farmers markets now everywhere we go, and bringing our food back to the earth, and then celebrating the harvest. And that's everything in these poems that
So
Andrew Maxfield has then commemorated in music. So it's just wonderful.
It's great. Maybe we'll be able to get some permission to have some students reading some of his poems, because we're also starting with Deb Szabo, like a poem a day kind of thing, but it'll come a few times a day. Yeah,
that's great.
Okay, well then that's wonderful that this is so live and ideas are coming at the minute. When this has been performed in the past, somebody reads Barry's poem before the chorus sings it, and it alternates between a choral movement, a baritone solo movement, then a choral movement, then a baritone solo movement. But somebody's reading the poems, because they're short, the ones that were set to music. We're not reading all the stanzas. So that, and Deb Szabo has been singing with the Newburyport Choral Society for a long time.
It's all coming
together. And she has done some work with her students in poetry and choral society concerts in the past. So it's like all coming together.
That's so interesting.
So
we just met this past week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Oh my gosh. So George, we'll be talking to you. These are great ideas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, because I think for our First Amendment and our freedom of speech, live arts is so important to support, and that would be poetry, whether, of course, you write it, but also to share poetry and to speak it. And I feel that it's so important, particularly we're hoping that the students will feel that they can read their own poems and say them. And then also the live arts that we have around the community, and then,
Right,
live
right,
dance. All of these
right.
live arts are something that we have because we're a democracy.
Right, right.
And,
The kids of this generation are totally committed to the environment. It's their number one thing that they're concerned about. Since I have two college students, I can talk
Well,
about
it's
what
the-
art,
Yeah,
and I'm
it's
a
their
music
future.
teacher, so I know what
Right.
kids are thinking about
Right.
now.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
Yeah.
it's quite scary, but yeah.
Wonderful. A lot of these pieces of Copeland's Old American songs, we know, we're very familiar with. Almost everybody knows the hymn "At the River." It's in their hymnals in church. In this case, it comes that the hymn precedes and is as old as American slave spirituals. And when it was sung by African Americans in the South, it was often used as a sign or a signal to gather to go on the Underground Railroad. Anything to do about water or the river was meaning a place of transport to go.
So funny because I just was talking to Tyler
Interesting.
about the protest songs, and I said, I won't necessarily add a lot of slave singing. I have a whole CD from the Smithsonian about the spirituals and slave songs specifically, but that they were used again in their sign of protest, their own protest, and the owners wouldn't necessarily know what they were singing about.
Right.
I think that's so fascinating. I mean, we have used music in so many ways, but it has been to express, as a political expression and activate the group.
But on all of this music that George selected to go together, it's also celebrating who we are as Americans in a sense of community, which is what you get in a chorus. And I know Aaron Copland found some of these songs by going to the Smithsonian and doing his own research. He did research at Brown University in their archives to find some of these things, and some of them are Shaker hymns. So they come from all walks of American history.
Wow.
And
Sounds interesting.
and it speaks to the threads that bind us all together with the community of spirit and what we have in common.
Well,
rather
who
than our
can
differences.
resist not giving the Choral Society a try?
Yes, absolutely.
And so what do you have to
Right?
know? I mean, I do know how to read music. I'm a little rusty, but I know some people may not read music and they may not feel like they can have a part in singing in this choral group.
true.
What do you have to say
That's
about
true.
that?
Well, yeah, I totally get that. There are a lot of shower singers who only sing for their significant other. But to take that step can be intimidating. But I think people have to realize that singing is a team sport, really.
Yep.
You're there with other people, a great diversity of people that are singing from many different backgrounds and different levels of musical knowledge and expertise. But the other thing is to feel more comfortable with this is that the director is constantly, George, is constantly giving us tips all along the way of
And
how to improve. And we also have online aids.
Yes, that's
Yes.
different from
Yes.
when I was there.
Right. And we
Right.
also have online aids, so between rehearsals you can go online,
See, that's
you can hear the
wonderful.
music, you can hear your part
Yep.
of the music. And Penny is instrumental in sometimes producing some of these
Wonderful.
parts.
Nice work, Penny.
So
I think that's a huge help, because if you don't read music, you take the music home and, well, so what?
right,
You can't
right.
read it.
Well, say the Chester Psalms by Leonard Bernstein, it's a choral masterpiece. And so there are many aids online with each voice part broken out, and you can slow them down, you can mark your place, you can repeat it. So these online aids are terrific.
So interesting, because that was not available when I
No.
was in the Choral Society.
It was
and now,
not, and
you know,
it's just transformed all
Yeah.
of choral singing.
This will be a challenging piece because Leonard Bernstein wanted this to be performed in Hebrew. So yet another religious tradition represented in this concert of Judaism. And it's a psalm, which would probably be based on the Old Testament. It's quite a wonderful piece.
there was just a public television program about celebrating the life of Leonard Bernstein. I can't remember its anniversary or something, but
100 years.
what
He
an
was-
interesting, wonderful man he was.
He was born here. He was, and he
Here?
went- yes, in Boston. And
I was like,
he
what, here?
He was born in. I know this. He went to Boston Latin School. He was born in Lawrence, Massachusetts.
That's I remember. I remember hearing that on
Right.
that.
Right.
Was it actually a really good documentary or something they did? I'm going to kind of resurrect that and look at it again now that we're talking about his music and stuff.
Right,
Well,
right. And Lenny was not his given first name. He changed that. But
interesting.
But he's one of those rare composers, conductors who's so well known that he's known as by his first name. But he went to Boston Latin School, and even though he went on into New York, he had a close relationship with the Tanglewood Chorus of the Boston Symphony. And when he was young and first went to do an internship at Tanglewood, he met Aaron Copland.
oh,
So
fascinating.
George was thinking about all these things when he
Yeah.
put
Oh,
this
George sounds
program.
very interesting.
Yes.
So, although I have to say, I'm mourn the loss of Jerry Wheel, who had passed away. He
just passed away last
Very,
month.
very sad, and he was so talented and so fascinating. And I'm sure that George, on coming into that, had to establish his own personality and his own interests and his own way. And I'm
George was a student
Of
his,
Jerry.
Oh,
of Jerry's.
interesting.
So
Right.
yeah, his first
that's
his
so
first semester.
fascinating.
At
So-
Boston University. He
Yes.
was his theory professor.
oh, interesting.
And, so George talks about having to stand on Jerry's shoulders
Yeah,
when he came in.
Jerry was so fascinating. Just such an unusually gifted man. Yeah.
Right. And we miss him very much.
Yes,
There'll
we do.
be a celebration of his life this spring.
Very
and We'll get
nice.
those details out to
That's
the
very
public.
nice. Well, if anyone's interested in joining the Choral Society, they have 2 Tuesdays to do that, and I'm sure you'll see some new faces there.
Yes.
So thank you so
hope
much
so.
for spending
I
the
hope
time.
so.
This has been so
Oh,
fascinating.
thank you,
We'll
sir,
have to-
so much.
We'll have to do this again with the next concert and introduce the
love
music, because
to.
I think it helps with people to
Yeah.
know what they're singing, and that it is open, that they are welcome, and you don't have to be the tip-top musician. You just have to have a
No.
love for music.
There
and
are
chorus
section
singing.
leaders in each section. We send out section notes. We have extra rehearsals if they're needed. And so there's a tremendous amount of support.
That sounds wonderful. Well, Penny and Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
We will see what this spring brings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you another time.